Here's a quote for you. Terrible things are happening outside. At any time of night and day, poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. Families are being torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared. End quote. That is from the diary of Anne Frank. You know who Anne Frank was, of course. Who was it, the wit that said history doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it does rhyme? Well, if ever there was a rhyme that fit perfectly with Anne Frank's statement, it's happening now. Terrible things are happening outside at any time of day or night. Poor, helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. Families are torn apart. Men, women, and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared. End quote. And the real horror of this, aside from the fact that it was Anne Frank who was eventually died in one of the Nazi death camps, the real horror of this, Anne Frank obviously was Jewish, and so was the little rat bastard, bald-headed prick who looks like Joseph Goebbels, who has outlined, promoted, instituted this policy, and I'm talking about the little Nazi Jew, Stephen Miller, this little arrogant asshole. I wish there was some way, as there is in the Catholic religion, to excommunicate people who are so against what their religion talks about, that the church and does such horrible things, the church can excommunicate them, which means, you're fucked forever now. I wish the Jews had something like that. I'm sure that Stephen Miller would be one of the first to go. What a slimy little bastard. As far as the military invading our cities, I hate to put it that way, but that's what this filthy toilet rat Donald Trump has been engineering, getting ready to do. He's waiting for the right moment. What he's trying to do is promote a reaction, and so far that reaction hasn't come. A reaction that will allow him to all of a sudden declare a state of emergency or martial law, or institute one or two of the provisions that are legal, which will suspend the entire Constitution and give him total control. Usually, or the idea when these laws or rules or regulations or constitutional provisions, whatever they are, when they originally, I'm assuming, were put into our legal code, it was with the thought that there may come a time in this country when it would be necessary to institute martial law, never thinking that that might be done by a psychotic fucker like Donald Trump, a brain-dead, ignorant savage like Donald Trump, who is so deep now into his delusional dementia that this crazy son of a bitch doesn't know which way is up. And as long as he's in power, this is going to continue and get worse. He has to be removed from the presidency. And, you know, I quoted yesterday for you what retired four-star General McCaffrey said on MSNBC, that the American public should not rely on the admirals or the generals to save us. McCaffrey is a great believer in use your power as a voter, which I completely agree with. But we have slipped into this dark corner of proto-fascism that is just generating more and more power as every day goes by. And I think we may be beyond the point where we, the American people, can do this without some assistance. Sure, there's an election coming up in 11 months, or 13 months, less than 13 months, if it happens at all. because this filthy, ignorant son of a bitch, Donald Trump, is going to do everything he possibly can, legal and illegal, to stop that election. So who do we rely on? Well, here's a clue. There are about 16 million military veterans living in the United States as of a count that was taken by the Defense Department in 2023. 16 million. And some sources, including the Veterans Administration, estimate a somewhat higher total when included are projections and different definitions of the word veteran. But let's just stick with the 16 million military veterans who are alive in this country, who have been either in combat or near combat or in the military during periods of U.S. military actions somewhere in the world. So if the bully boys decide, I'm not talking about the U.S. military right now, I'm talking about the Stasi, the Gestapo, these fucking goons who have gone to work for Donald Trump for the money and to show off their bulging biceps and to torture men, women, and babies, drag them into the street in the middle of the night, some of the kids naked. You've heard that story over and over now. But these face-covering pricks eventually are going to run up against more than just undefended American citizens who may be standing there offering up their body as resistance to these pricks. And then the Gestapo, of course, moves in with their truncheons and their rifle butts and beat the shit out of people and kick them and insult them and detain them. And some of them just disappear. Well, take it from the foothills of the North Georgia mountains. These fucking bastards eventually are going to run up against a force that is going to not only defeat them, but humiliate them and show them for the little pricks that they are. And I am assuming, and it's maybe a dangerous assumption, but I'm assuming that among those 16 million military veterans in this country, there's a huge number who are watching this and waiting for some organization maybe, waiting for some former leadership when they were in the military to step out and say, okay, we can't organize active duty military personnel, but we can activate us. I just have a absolute sense that eventually that or something very similar to it is going to happen, because we're not going to go down without a fight. No, we're not. The 350 million of us in this country who, for the most part, are preoccupied with all kinds of extraneous shit, if you consider just living your life to be extraneous. But extraneous in the sense that so many of us, the vast majority, are just not aware of what the fuck is happening. And to a large degree, it's willful ignorance. I understand that. You know, I've said before, a couple of psychological barriers that we have developed as human beings as avoidance and denial. Well, it can't really be happening. Look, the stoplights work and I can still drive to work and I can go to the grocery store and buy a half gallon of 2% milk. So what's everybody upset about? I'm sure the citizens of various cities and countries in the old Soviet Union felt that way until it was too late. I'm sure that the citizens in Germany and Eastern Europe felt that way until the Wehrmacht came storming in. The 16 million military veterans who are living in the United States right now eventually are not going to sit silent. I honestly, firmly believe that. And the main reason is because when so many of these people, these veterans, when they were young people, some of them teenagers, 18, 19 years old, 20, 21, 22, when they took the oath to defend, protect, and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that was a high point in their lives. And so many of them who were then committed to battle never returned. But they made that commitment. They took that vow, and they fucking meant it. And the 16 million retired military veterans who are in this country right now, I totally believe that they firmly believe the vow that they took, and that it did not end the dedication to that vow when they were released from military service. So whether this filthy, goddamn, ignorant savage Donald Trump is aware of it or not, and I don't think he is because he's fucking 90% senile, those 16 million American former military personnel are here. They're aware of what's going on. And when the moment comes, they will respond. And so will we. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.